It all started with a scream, not from the dog, from the crowd. The yellow Labrador had broken free from his handler. His leash, still attached to his collar, dragged wildly across the concrete floor of the downtown bus terminal as he charged, ears flat, chest heaving, eyes locked onto something, or someone, near the benches by Gate 12. People jumped up from their seats. Coffee spilled. A stroller tipped. Phones flew out, recording without understanding. The dog was barking. Loud, sharp, repetitive. Each bark hit like a slap. And at the end of his path, standing completely still, was a boy. Small, no more than 8, face pale, body tense, fingers fluttering rhythmically near his chest. He didn't run, didn't scream. He just stood there, breathing through his mouth, blinking at the oncoming dog with wide, glassy eyes. "Get him away!" someone shouted. "That kid's gonna get mauled." The boy's mother turned just in time to see the Labrador barreling forward. "Jacob!" She lunged forward, arms out, panic overtaking her voice. But the crowd moved faster. 2 bystanders tried to intercept the dog, but missed. One tripped. Another dropped their bag. The Labrador was faster. Closer. 10 feet. 6. 4. The boy didn't move. And then, "He's gonna bite him. Call security." But the dog didn't stop. Not until he was face to face with the boy. And what happened next made every phone drop. Because instead of leaping, instead of snarling, the dog laid down, hard, fast, chest to the floor, tail thumping, whining, nudging his nose toward the boy's hands. And the boy? He smiled, just slightly. His fingers stopped fluttering, and, almost robotically, he lowered one hand, letting it rest on the dog's snout. The terminal went silent. Security guards arrived seconds later, breathless. One reached for the dog. "Back! He's unstable!" But the boy stepped in front of the Labrador, arms stretched sideways like a little human shield. No words, just a stance, protective, clear. "He's fine," the mother whispered, eyes wide. "Oh my God, he's helping." "Helping?" the guard asked, confused. "My son," she said, her voice shaking. "He hasn't let anyone touch him in almost 2 years." The crowd around them began to thaw. Phones lowered, brows furrowed. And the dog? Still on the ground, still whining, still nudging gently into the boy's hand, almost like he was waiting. 30 minutes earlier, that same dog had been labeled a problem case. Unadoptable. Too reactive. Too loud. He'd been transported to the bus terminal with a volunteer handler for one final evaluation at a different facility across town. He had barked the whole ride, refused treats, snapped his leash from tension. Not aggression, just something else. Something urgent. And now, with his body pressed low to the cold terminal floor and a boy's trembling hand resting gently against his nose, everyone could see it. This dog wasn't out of control. He was trying to communicate, trying to reach someone. And somehow, in a world of noise, movement, and panic, Jacob had heard him. The mother slowly knelt beside her son. Her hands hovered. Can I touch him too?" Jacob nodded once. She reached out, heart thudding, and placed her palm on the dog's shoulder. Still no flinch, still no tension. Only calm, only breath. Only the sound of her son softly, miraculously, humming a tune he hadn't sung in years, one she used to play during his therapy sessions when he was 3. The tune meant comfort. The tune meant he felt safe. And somehow, the dog knew it too. Jacob didn't speak, but the way he touched the dog said everything. A gentle tap, a soft stroke behind the ears, fingers tracing patterns on the thick yellow fur like he was reading Braille made just for him. His mother knelt beside him, stunned. "He doesn't do this," she whispered, blinking fast. "He doesn't even let me do this." The guards hovered, unsure. The handler who'd brought the dog finally caught up, face flushed and breathless. "What the hell happened?" "Your dog snapped," said one of the guards. "He didn't snap," Jacob's mom replied firmly. "He chose." The handler, a man in his late 40s, badge clipped to his backpack, looked down at the dog. "His name's Murphy, been bounced from 4 shelters, too anxious, doesn't listen to commands when overstimulated. They said he'd never be adopted." He paused. Guess they were wrong. Murphy looked up at Jacob with soft brown eyes, then stood up slowly and leaned in, pressing the side of his body against the boy's legs, not to control him, but to anchor him. The boy swayed gently and smiled. That rare, fleeting kind of smile that mothers like hers hadn't seen in years. The crowd had thinned. Only a few stayed, watching in disbelief as a boy once wrapped in invisible walls now reached out, quietly, to the world through fur and breath. And then Jacob did something no one expected. He hugged the dog, full arms, head resting on Murphy's neck, a sigh escaping like a whisper from his ribs. The handler's eyes went wide. "He's never let anyone do that, not even me." Jacob didn't let go, not for minutes, not even when the announcement echoed through the terminal. "Route 49 now boarding on gate 10. His mother's voice was barely audible. "I think he thinks the dog is his." The volunteer gave a dry laugh, shook his head. "I think the dog agrees." Back at the rescue center, no one knew Murphy's story. Not really. He'd been found tied outside a fire station, collar too tight, nails overgrown. No microchip, no tags. Just a set of scars behind his shoulder blades and a tendency to bark at flashing lights and loud engines. He'd failed 2 behavior assessments, was scheduled to be transferred to a no-adoption facility across town, a soft name for a shelter that didn't believe in second chances. The ride to the bus terminal that day was meant to be a final move before paperwork was closed, but Murphy had other plans. When the incident report was filed, the rescue board reviewed it with confusion. "Reactive dog escaped handler control," it read. "Targeted minor, minor unharmed, unclear behavior." But the videos told a different story. In one clip, you could see the exact moment Murphy spotted Jacob, how his body stiffened, not with aggression, but instinct. He wasn't running at the boy. He was running to him. And the moment he reached him, the posture changed, the bark softened, the world disappeared. The mother, holding Jacob's hand as they sat beside Murphy, asked the handler, "What happens now?" He blinked. "I don't know. Technically, we still have custody, but after what I just saw." He kneeled down, eye to eye with the dog. "Murphy, is this what you were waiting for?" The dog licked Jacob's hand in response. Not excitedly, deliberately, like a signature, like a vow. Someone in the terminal offered to donate a leash. Someone else gave the boy a juice box and offered her seat. A driver from the next bus over walked by and nodded at the mother. "That dog saved that boy," he muttered. "Don't care what your paperwork says." And Jacob? He started humming again, the same tune from earlier, over and over like a chant, as he pet Murphy's back with rhythmic, even strokes. And as he did, his mother noticed something she hadn't seen since he was a toddler. Regulation. Calm. Focus. Connection. Not with her, not with a therapist, but with a dog who'd never passed a test. A dog who'd been dismissed. a dog who refused to be caged by what people assumed he was. The video hit the internet 2 days later. It wasn't posted by the mother or the handler. It came from a woman who had been sitting in the waiting area near gate 11. She'd caught the moment Murphy approached Jacob. The hug, the stillness, the soundless miracle of a boy so often locked in silence, softly humming into a dog's neck. The clip was only 38 seconds long, but in that time, it captured everything the rescue reports couldn't. Murphy wasn't out of control. He was on a mission. The comments poured in. "I've never seen a dog do that. Is that boy okay, or is the dog trained? This needs to be on the news." Within 24 hours, the shelter line was flooded with calls, not from potential adopters, from trainers, therapists, veterinarians, people asking the same thing. "Is that dog available? We think he might have been trained before." The rescue center dug deeper, called the vet who'd first treated Murphy. She'd noted that he flinched at metal tools, but stayed completely still for ear checks, something most dogs hated. She'd also written, "Unusually calm around medical staff, possible working dog history?" That's when a name came up. Valor Behavioral Canine Program, 2 states over. A non-profit that trained therapy dogs for children on the autism spectrum, but had lost funding and closed after a flood destroyed their training site 3 years ago. Several dogs had been lost in the system after the closure. Some were adopted, some vanished. One had been listed as unaccounted for, a yellow Labrador named Murphy. The handler gasped when he saw the archived photo. Same eyes, same nose, same solemn stare. "It's him," he whispered. He wasn't broken. He was trying to finish his job. Meanwhile, Jacob didn't want to leave the dog's side. He began waking up earlier, asking to walk to the shelter, not with words, with gestures. He'd press his fingers to his lips, then tap the leash on the table. Each time he did it, his mother's heart cracked open a little more. "You want to see Murphy?" He'd nod, gently. And when they arrived, Murphy would already be waiting by the gate, tail wagging once, slowly, like he already knew, like he was waiting to clock in. The director of the old training program was tracked down, now retired. He cried when he saw the footage. "We trained him for 18 months. He was supposed to be placed with a boy who couldn't speak after trauma. Then the center shut down, and everything scattered. I always wondered what happened to him." He paused. Turns out, he never stopped looking for someone. A local child psychologist visited the shelter to observe Jacob and Murphy together. She watched through the fence. The boy sat in the grass, Murphy beside him. No words, just soft, mirrored breathing. She wrote 3 pages of notes, then closed her book. "This isn't just companionship," she told the staff. "This is recognition. Murphy sees what the rest of the world misses. He's doing the work we spend years teaching humans to do." News crews arrived days later. Jacob didn't mind the cameras, as long as Murphy was there. He even allowed a reporter to shake his hand. A first. And when they asked the mother what she hoped for, she said, "I don't want this to be just a viral moment. I want this to change how we look at dogs like him, kids like mine. Everyone's so quick to label, but maybe the ones we think are broken are just waiting to be understood." One night, Jacob had a meltdown. Loud, overwhelming, triggered by sirens outside. He screamed, hit the walls, cried in a way only a mother understands. That deep, guttural kind of cry that has nothing to do with words and everything to do with overload. Murphy had been at the shelter that night, but the moment they called, he was at their door in 20 minutes. The moment he walked in, Jacob ran to him, buried his face in fur, and quieted, not with logic, not with instruction, with presence, with something primal, something remembered. Murphy didn't need to be taught how to help. He just needed the right boy, the right moment, the right chance. And now, he wasn't just Jacob's dog. He was everything they both had been waiting for. 3 weeks after the terminal incident, a hearing was scheduled. Not in a courtroom, in a meeting room at the county's Department of Animal Welfare. The question wasn't about custody anymore. It was about approval. Could Murphy be released from the rescue system and placed permanently with Jacob? Could a dog once labeled too reactive be officially reclassified as a therapy companion, despite having no recent formal certification? The debate wasn't long. The answer was obvious. But the paper trail took time. And while the process dragged, Jacob waited. Every morning, he'd walk to the front door with the same routine, pat his chest twice, then point to the leash. His mother would shake her head gently. "Not yet, sweetheart. They're still deciding." He didn't cry. He didn't throw a fit. He just walked to the window, sat on the rug, and stared down the street, waiting. Murphy stayed at the shelter during the wait, but something had changed. He wouldn't sleep unless he could see the front gate. He refused food some nights. Other nights, he howled, low and steady, like he was calling someone home. One of the volunteers finally placed a blanket near the fence, facing the sidewalk. That's where he'd lay, every night, head down, eyes forward, like a soldier waiting for orders, like a friend waiting to be let back in. The story reached national networks. TV anchors spoke about the misunderstood Labrador who saved a boy's heart. Medical publications began citing the case as an example of instinctive emotional regulation between service animals and neurodivergent children. Letters arrived, hundreds, some from other autism families, thanking Jacob's mom for sharing their reality. Others from former shelter volunteers who admitted to walking away from dogs like Murphy, not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. One note, handwritten and sent from across the country, simply read, "I work in special ed. That dog did more in 10 minutes than I've done in 10 months. And instead of being proud, I cried. Because it made me realize we're all trying to fix things that aren't broken. Thank you for proving the world wrong." Then, finally, the call came. Murphy was cleared. No longer property of the shelter. No longer a case. He was Jacob's. They didn't tell Jacob in words. They didn't have to. They let Murphy out of the back of the transport van and handed the leash directly to Jacob. And the boy, usually so rigid, so withdrawn, took it gently, then knelt on the ground. Murphy walked right into him, pressing his chest against Jacob's heart, and stood there. No command, no hesitation, just understanding. They didn't need applause. They didn't even need cheers. But people clapped anyway. Because even without understanding the full story, everyone there felt it. This wasn't adoption. It was reunion. Over the next few weeks, something beautiful unfolded. Jacob's meltdowns didn't disappear, but they lessened. He began sleeping through the night. He let his mother touch his hair without flinching. He laughed, real, uncontrolled laughter, when Murphy rolled onto his back and kicked the air after eating. He still didn't speak often, but when he did, it was around Murphy. And the first word his mother ever heard him say clearly, in full voice, was this: "Stay." And Murphy did. The rescue organization changed its intake protocol. Dogs once labeled unadoptable were given second behavioral screenings, some with Jacob and Murphy present to see if the reactions could be mirrored. 3 more dogs were saved that month, 2 of them placed with other neurodivergent children, and the program that had trained Murphy years earlier. They reopened, this time crowdfunded and run by a coalition of parents and volunteers who believed in instinct over evaluation. Their new motto was painted in bold letters on the front gate: Not every dog is meant to follow. Some are born to lead. And beneath it, a mural of a yellow Labrador lying quietly beneath the open hand of a child. Murphy never wore a vest, not even after the papers cleared. His mother offered something soft, maybe blue, to show people who he was. But Jacob shook his head. "He's not a helper," he finally whispered one day. "He's my other half." And Murphy? He didn't need a label. He walked beside Jacob with the kind of awareness that couldn't be taught. He knew when to press in close, when to block sensory overload, when to lie across Jacob's feet to ground him to the moment, and when to let go and let the boy lead. At school, things changed slowly. Jacob still wore headphones most days, still used his cards to communicate during lunch, but for the first time, he sat with the other kids, because Murphy was beside him. And where Murphy went, eyes softened. Curiosity replaced judgment. One child asked, "Why doesn't he talk?" Jacob answered, softly, "I do, just not always with words." There were still rough days, but now they weren't silent. They weren't hopeless, because Murphy had become more than support. He was translation. For Jacob, for the world, even for his mother, who used to lie awake at night wondering if her son would ever feel safe in his own skin. Now she watched him sleep curled beside a dog who never asked him to be different, only to be honest. Years passed, and the story never faded. It wasn't always on the news, but it stayed alive in conversations. In new adoption forms that asked, "Has this animal shown instinctive emotional awareness?" In shelters that created new categories, not aggressive, not reactive, communicative. In therapy centers that invited kids to meet rescue dogs, not to train them, but to listen to them. Because Murphy had taught them something no one had ever dared to write in a behavioral report. Sometimes, the ones we overlook are the ones most equipped to see what we can't. Jacob turned 10, then 12. His voice grew stronger. He didn't always use it, but when he did, it came without fear. One evening, he sat by the fire pit in their backyard, Murphy at his feet, and he asked, "Do you think he picked me?" His mother smiled. "No doubt in my mind." Jacob nodded, thoughtful. "Then I'll never let anyone unpick him again." Murphy raised his head slightly, as if understanding, then lowered it again, tail brushing Jacob's ankle once. Soft, present, true. Murphy lived to be 16. Slower in the last year, grayer, but never less alert. Even in his final months, he'd rise every morning when Jacob got dressed, even if he didn't walk far. He'd sit at the door, wait for his boy to return. And when the day came, when Murphy didn't rise anymore, Jacob didn't scream. He didn't crumble. He curled beside him, just like he used to, and whispered, "You don't have to stay now. I'll walk for both of us." They buried Murphy under the oak tree in their backyard. Jacob chose the stone. It read, "He didn't fix me. He found me, and stayed until I knew how to stay, too." The world moved on. But not Jacob, not the shelters, not the kids who met dogs like Murphy afterward and felt, for the first time, that they weren't broken, just waiting for someone to speak their language. And not the mother who used to wonder if her son would ever say, "I love you," until the night she walked past his room and heard him whisper to the stars, "I love you, Murphy." If this story touched you, don't let it stop with you. Share it with someone who believes in second chances, whether it's for a dog, a child, or the part of themselves they thought was unlovable. Leave a comment. Tell us about the animal that changed your life, and subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes the world doesn't need fixing. It just needs more beings willing to stay.